Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality podcast. This is the podcast where Kyle and I explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today, we're looking at some insane, unsolved hometown homicides. Strap in as we examine the edges of the unknown. Oh, shoot. Sorry. All right. Well, here we are, Kyle, and the things that we're talking about today are about hometown homicides, and the cases that we've picked have a bit of a personal flavor for us. I'm going to be talking about one that really hit me close to home, and you've got one where you kind of were the witness of some of the goings on, right?
Yeah, I got to see some of it, and not necessarily the killing, but I got to see the aftermath in action.
Wow. Well, I'll just go ahead and get started by telling you a little bit of a story. I had this buddy in college. He went to the same high school as me, went to the same church as me. He even wanted to ask out the girl I ended up marrying. We had a mutual buddy who was trying to break into showbiz, and he was telling jokes at a local comedy club. And so this other friend of mine wanted to kind of be a part of it. You know, he was probably a little bit jealous, but he came to me and he says, "Hey, I've written some jokes for our buddy Jake's stand-up routine. Do you want to hear?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "You know how you can set your phone to vibrate?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "It's like someone's sending you the vibe, right?" I was like, "Okay, what else you got?" And he goes, "Well, whenever my girlfriend texts me, I tell her, I love when you get all textual. Get it? Textual?" I was like,
Yikes.
I was like, "Dude, do you have anything besides texting jokes?" And he's like, "No, not really. That's pretty much all I've got." I was like, "Okay, well, it's a little edgy. The world's not quite ready for it." But that guy ended up dying texting and driving. I think about that all the time. Like, it was such a tragedy. It was incredibly ironic because he died doing what he loved, but it's still tragic. And I know we've all had people die. You know, we've all experienced death to some degree. I had a friend of mine, probably the first time I had to go to a funeral was when I was 15. A friend of mine died from cancer. He was just a kid. There's another kid at my school who died that same year from an aneurysm. They're all tragic deaths, but they're also natural causes. And this first case hit home for me because it wasn't just a tragedy, it was also an atrocity. And the person I'm talking about, I met at my high school when I was at a football game. I was like 17 years old. Her name was Lisa Guerrery, and she was fun, just pretty, but I didn't really know her very well beyond that. And then I graduated high school in 2001, and I went to Mexico for a couple of years for my church mission. When I got back in 2004, I was thinking about all the girls I might be interested in dating, and she was one of the ones that popped into my head. And my little brother was about the same age, and I asked if he knew if she was around or if she was dating anyone. He's like, "Bro, you didn't hear?" I was like, "Hear what?" It's like, "Dude, Lisa was killed in the desert last year camping with her boyfriend, and nobody knows who did it." I was like, "What? You're kidding me." Like, I was floored. I couldn't believe it. Like, you don't expect that somebody you know personally is going to wind up the victim of a crime like that.
Oh, yeah.
And for it to be someone that I knew personally, it was a totally different level. It kind of took the wind out of my sails for a while. And I was kind of hit with these questions like, who would do such a thing? And it's such a tragedy or just a horrible thing to have two young people whose whole lives ahead of them just be cut down before they can even do anything. And it's the kind of thing that kind of haunts you. It sticks with you. And every once in a while, even though time passes and you kind of got to move on to other things, these old thoughts still bubble to the surface of my mind, and these old questions keep coming back. It's been almost 20 years since Lisa Guerrery and her boyfriend Brandon Rumbaugh were killed. The police, of course, are no closer to solving the crime than they were when it happened in 2003. The events leading up to the killing are a little bit vague, but it basically went like this. Lisa and Brandon started dating in 2002. They had gone on their first date to Lookout Point near Bumblebee, which is a small ghost town just north of Phoenix. And to celebrate their 1-year anniversary, they had decided to borrow Lisa's mom's pickup truck and go back to where they had their first date. And they were going to camp there overnight. A day or so before they left, though, Brandon got into an argument with who police described as a tall, husky 40-something man in the couple's apartment in Scottsdale. And then the day they left, October 17th, they packed up all their camping supplies, and including some disposable cameras, and headed north. From the road, Lisa calls her mom to let her know that they have her truck and they were planning to be home the next day. The photos on their camera show that they explored Bumblebee, taking random pictures of the buildings there, and eventually pulled over along Bumblebee Road, where they planned to camp for the night in sleeping bags under the stars. The disposable camera also shows that they took turns taking pictures of each other, and that's about the last thing anyone knows about their time alive. The next thing that happened to them is that they were each shot in the head multiple times while in their sleeping bags. And I don't know if you saw any articles that showed how many times they were shot, but I'm assuming it's at least 2 each.
Yeah, I think I saw one that said it was 3.
3. But that's a lot of gunshots. It doesn't take that many gunshots to make sure that somebody's dead. But that to me shows a level of malevolence in this kind of random crime. But so the next day, Lisa was supposed to bring her mom's truck back. And when she didn't, her mother feared the worst. She called the cops, she started calling friends, and they started looking for the truck. And it was discovered October 19th, 2003, with Lisa and Brandon's bodies in the back of the truck. Now, at the time, the police had no idea who did this to them or why. And they were looking for other similar crimes around the country, but the rumors were that the killer was either somebody who argued with Brandon a couple days before the trip, or maybe somebody from Bumblebee who was upset that they were on his property. But more and more, it's looking like it was just a random killing with no motive. And as many of us know, when there's no evidence and no motive, it can be really, really difficult, if not impossible, to track down any leads. And, maybe that was the end of the story. But in August 2004, another couple, Jason Allen and Lindsay Cutshaw, were killed in almost the same way in Sonoma County, California. The couple had been on a trip. They were camp counselors at a Christian Bible camp in the mountains, and they had taken a brief trip between camp sessions. And while they were camping in the back of the pickup truck along the beach, they were murdered, again, shot in the head while they were in the sleeping bags. And for 13 years, the police in Sonoma County had no leads Well, they made no arrests. I shouldn't say they had no leads, but they didn't make any arrests. But in 2017, they did arrest someone for the crime, a man by the name of Sean Gallen. And the thing about Sean Gallen is that he was a killer. He killed animals in gruesome fashion. He hung his brother's dog as kind of like a practice or a prank on his brother. In 2004, he tried to blow up a friend after a small argument at a bar. He had like built this bomb out of a grenade casing and hid it in a gift box that he put on his friend's car. And he expected his friend to open it, but his friend didn't open it. It was friend's baby mama opened it. And when it
using the word friend a little loosely.
Yeah, right. He's not really a good friend.
No,
the guy that he got in the fight with at the bar, but the bomb exploded and it sent shrapnel into this poor woman's face, her eye, her mouth, and her arm. And she still has those scars to this day. Now, another thing that he did was in 2004, before the Christian camp counselors were killed, he was driving around town at a mall near a mall in Coddington, California, and he saw this car that he thought was following him. And so he pulls out a submachine gun and just starts shooting at him. He's like, I thought they were Mexicans who were trying to get me, so I wanted to get them before they got me. It's like, oh my gosh. How does someone think to do that?
Unstable.
Like, he's totally unstable. Now, when he was kind of just hanging out in the wilderness, maybe hunting, when he saw Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen sitting on the beach, and he said he later said that he's like, all right, I guess I'm just going to start killing people now, like it was just a decision he made right then. But clearly, he had a pattern of trying to kill people before. Right? You don't point and fire a submachine gun at someone not intending to kill them. You don't try to blow up somebody not intending to kill them. So I have a hard time believing that that was the moment he decided he was going to be a killer. But as they fell asleep, Allen and Cutshall, as they fell asleep in the back of the car, Sean Gallen crept down, pulled out a gun. He first shot Jason Allen with a couple gunshots to the head. And because the gunfire was so loud, it woke up Lindsay Cutshall, and she managed to let out a noise before he shot her dead as well. And police discovered the bodies and started asking around. And Sean Gallen was one of the first people that they looked at. And when they picked him up for questioning at the police station, he called his dad and asked his dad to help him get rid of the guns in his apartment before the police could search it. And his dad said, yeah, I'll do it. But his dad didn't know what had happened. And that was really the only way he was able to avoid detection for so many years. What ended up bringing him in was in 2017, he killed his brother and was arrested for that crime. Now, interestingly about his dad was in 2013, there were flyers going around asking for information about the Cutshall and Allen killings. And his dad saw it and realized that his son was the one who did the killings. And that was why he had been brought in. And so his dad, out of guilt, killed himself in 2013. And the question I have is it possible that Sean Gallen could somehow be related to the 2003 murders of Lisa Guerrery and Brendan Rumbaugh? And the problem is there's not a lot of evidence tying Gallen to the Bumblebee killings. It seems like Gallen spent most of his time close to home. There's not really any evidence that he did go to Bumblebee. There's not really evidence he didn't. It just seems like the killings are so similar And Gallon couldn't have just decided to start killing on that beach near Jenner, California. But there's just not really any evidence. Now, it is possible that in the same way Sean Gallon was caught for the killing of Jason Allen and Lindsay Cutshaw, the person who killed Lisa Guerreri and Brandon Rumbaugh will likewise commit another crime and confess to their killings. At this point, that's about all we have to go on. They have hired another cold case officer to investigate Lisa Guerreri and Brandon Rumbaugh's killings. But after almost 20 years, the Bumblebee killer is still unknown.
There was something I read in an article here that I thought was interesting. It's from AZ Central and from 2017. They had where's that? They talked, one of the officers, it was kind of weird what one of the officers said. They said, do we believe that it was random act? And is there a crazy person out there? Not necessarily. Can we rule it out? Not necessarily. So, I mean, that pretty much just shows that, like, they have no idea. They don't have even remotely even come close to having an idea of why.
Yeah, I remember watching this show called Luther, and one of the episodes featured this pair of killers who ran around the town, and the Luther had the hardest time figuring out the pattern in the murders. And it was all because the murders were being conducted by the roll of a dice. They're basically playing Dungeons and Dragons, but in real life. And every time they'd roll the dice, they had this catalog of things that would come up. And he said something along the lines that where there's no motive and it's just random killing, it's really hard to find who's responsible. And it took them forever to find out who these kids were. And that reminds me of people like the freeway shooter, who's just letting things, opening fire on traffic. There's no car that he's looking for. There's nobody in particular he's trying to hurt. He just wants random violence. It's a random act of violence. And it's really hard for them to figure out who this guy is. And it's basically what we have here. It's senseless. It's atrocious. And the real thing is that we don't even know. The police don't even know where to go. This killer has been may have been carrying on with his life. Hopefully they're locked up for something else and just haven't confessed. But they may be just carrying from these kids all those years ago. If anybody who's watching this knows anything about the killer, there is still a $10,000 reward for information leading to their arrest. So you can contact Yavapai County Sheriff's Office with any information that you may have. And hopefully we can bring this case to a close.
Yeah, let's hope.
Now, you had another case. The case you had happened when you were a kid, right? And tell us what happened.
So what I'm talking about is the Canal Killer murders. And anybody who doesn't know what that is, what was happening was there was women were going for bike rides along the canal over here in the west part of Phoenix, and they were getting murdered and decapitated, and their heads were being thrown into the canal, and they were finding the bodies somewhere else. So,
wow.
It was. So I grew up, I've grown up here in Phoenix my whole life. So, I was finally right around that age where I could finally walk to Metro Center by myself. I didn't live that far from it. My neighborhood backs up to pretty much to Metro Center and then I-17, and then that was my neighborhood. And so there's the canal there, so you have to cross the canal to get to Metro Center from where I lived.
The Metro Center is the mall in that part of town.
Yep. And then right adjacent to it is a roller coaster place that you can do roller coasters and games. It's called Castles and Coasters. Then it was actually called Golf and Stuff.
Golf and
And
stuff.
Golf and Stuff.
Nice.
And so it's November of 1992. And I'm walking to the mall. Hey mom, can I go to the mall? Yeah, you can go in. And as I'm getting close to the canal, there's all these cops and there's all this yellow tape, and it's, if you get to the canal, there's two canals here in Phoenix. There's one that's full of water, and there's one that they built for when it came to the point of no obvious reason. And so there's one that's got water in it, and there's a huge one that doesn't have anything in it. And next to the one with water are these crazy, there's dirt paths. And then there's sections that go under the street, so you don't have to cross the street. You can just go under the street next to the canal and go up and keep riding your bike without having to wait for traffic. And I know at night alone, there's two little lights that used to be in those underneath passages. And I was like, I would never want to be by myself going into, because it was like, exactly what you expect from a horror movie. Like, it's pitch black. There's a couple dim lights in there, and you're having to walk through this tunnel underneath the road to get to the other side. And yes. And so as I'm walking and look, and I see all these cops and detectives, and they're all messing around in the canal, which what came to be was one of the victims of this canal killer murder. And so what it was is there was two victims. It was right around November of 92. 22-year-old Angela Brozo was taking a ride on the canal on her bike, and she never returned home. And then the next day, they found her mutilated, headless body right around the avenues of 25th and Cactus. And then they found her head in the canal a few days later, which means it floated from 25th and Cactus. I hate to say it like that, but it did. It floated from right around that 25th and Cactus area all the way to
Metro Center.
Like 29th and Dunlap is where the Metro Center, right around the kind of the cross streets of Metro Center. And that's where they fit.
That's like 10 miles.
No, it's a few miles, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's 4, 5, 4.
Wow.
3, 4, 5. And so what happens is right where they found her head is there's these grates that are in the canal. And what these grates are for is to stop debris.
Okay.
And it just, a local fisherman was there, and they found her. And then that was in November of 92. Come around to September of 1993, they found another young lady's body near the canal, which was 17-year-old Melanie Burness. She was also biking, and she also, the same thing, she vanished. And so the cops, they did suspect that there was something going on, that because it was so close in the manner of their murders. So they did find evidence. They did collect DNA at the time, but they actually didn't turn up to anybody at the time. There was nobody that was in the system yet. And then it kind of goes cold. It goes cold for 20 years. But in the meantime, while that was happening, right around May of 92, there was a disappearance of a 13-year-old girl named Brandy Myers.
Really? Okay, so this is before the other two killings.
This is before the other two killings. So this is after all this is going on. This is stuff that had actually come up afterwards. And says Myers vanished from a Cave Creek area of Phoenix around May of '92. So I watched a video where they have Brandy's sister explain where so she lived like a block away from where Brian Miller lived.
Okay.
And she was going door to door selling like candy bars for school.
Okay.
And so they said the neighbor before him wasn't home. The neighbor after him never got a knock on the door from the girl. So that led authorities to believe that she had disappeared from once she hit Brian's house.
Did he tell them that she had knocked on his door? Like, how did they find out that she knocked on his door?
Well, what happened was Brian's ex-wife actually confessed that he killed a girl that matched Myers' profile. But she didn't believe him at the time. But after all this came out of him getting caught for murdering, or after time and all this going on, she actually called it in. And even you could see that there's something brewing in him because even in 1989, when Miller was 16, he attacked a woman with a knife, stabbed her several times, and she actually lived. And he was charged with attempted murder, but since he was a minor, and at that time Arizona didn't have a lot of laws in place to charge minors for big crimes like that, he actually only had to spend a little time in a juvenile detention, and then they released him when he was 18.
No way.
So all this built up to these two murders, and then, like I was saying, it went cold after Melanie and Angela were murdered. It went cold. Well, what happened was he actually moved to Washington State.
I mean, before you move on, like that is like real life Pennywise. Like the girl's just knocking doors and he grabs her and he kills her.
Yeah, they never found her body.
Wow. So he goes to Washington, and then what happens?
He goes to Washington. So up to then, the case goes cold. 20 years pass. He's then moved to Washington, and now we're all the way up into 2000, when there's a victim named Victoria Mickelson. She was 14 at the time. She believes that Brian actually tried to abduct her on her way to a bus stop, and it was in a park. She was cutting through a park, and he grabbed her and he started stabbing her, and somebody there saw it happen, intervened, and broke it up, and he took off. So she recovered with 17 stab wounds.
17 stab wounds?
Yes, and she believes that Brian Miller was the person that attacked her.
But she didn't get a good look at him?
No, I guess it happened so quick, and that he wasn't actually able to. And then in 2002, he picked up his neighbor, Melissa Ramirez, and because they lived in the same apartment complex, they kind of knew each other. They're acquaintances, kind of friends. So during the ride, I guess Miller pulled out a knife and began stabbing her in the car.
Oh my gosh.
Then he was arrested and he went to trial for it, and he got off on self-defense because whatever
He entered her car.
She entered his car.
Oh, she was in his car.
She was in his car.
Wow. Okay, so
and then he got off on a technicality of defense, saying that that Melissa was trying to rob him. So he was acquitted of all charges in Washington. Shortly after that, he decides to move back to Arizona. And still some more time passes. And then right around 2014, there was this genealogist that was in town for like a convention with the police. And what happened was, after the convention, this Colleen for Fitzpatrick person, the police said, detectives had came up to her and was telling her about these two killings, and that they had some stuff and some evidence and some DNA, and they weren't getting anywhere with it, and they couldn't really figure it out. So she was like, okay, yeah, this was kind of, her wheelhouse. So what they did, they sent it to her, and with the genealogy and the DNA, and they narrowed the suspect of 2,000 to just 5 people.
Whoa, that's a very powerful technique. So
Yeah.
she must have been at this convention just showcasing what she could do. And the Phoenix PD was like, we need to get this gal on the phone, get her on the case.
Yeah. So they sent her everything. So it says they took a Y DNA test, and according to this article, it says many of these results posted online. Like, I guess it's kind of close to like, so if you can, it's like 23andMe type of things, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, because everyone's doing it for, to see areas common, find family, and so she ran it through. She got it down to 5, and I guess it came down to the Miller family. So it came down to five Millers of the same family, and they narrowed it down to Brian. The cops went in. They see, it says so when Phoenix Police Department gave me their Y profile on this case, I applied the software to match, and those hundreds of thousands of profiles. Oh, it says that it came up with 3 exact matches to the name Miller. And it says they had 2,000 suspects, narrowing it down to 5. From the 5, there's only one that floated to the top because his profile is pretty much what the FBI was looking for.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
that's an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah. So once they got him, they went in, and they got their warrants and everything. They went in and they swabbed him. They said they got there, and they said they got a call from the DNA lab saying, we need to talk to you. They said, they're sure. And that they just solved they said, yep, hey, I'll be there, going to come over. And they just solved the Canal Murder. And they said, nope, the cops were like, nope, we want the overtime. Let's do this. And so they went through, and I know once they got to the house, they searched, and I know they searched for the bikes, because it's like, if you find pictures of his house and when the police are going through, he was a little bit of a hoarder, so there was a lot of stuff in like a shed and in the backyard. Like, there was a lot of junk, and I know they had gone through it looking for any items, bikes, anything that could relate them back to it. It didn't have anything there, but since they had the the DNA. They arrested him, and what he tried doing was he was trying to do a plea for an insanity plea. And so that was sat around for a while, but they ended up in January of, I think, this year, they deemed him competent to stand trial. And what I was at, remember we were talking about this before and asking, I thought I read somewhere about they had to go with laws and stuff that were in 92 to 93.
Yeah, kind of like that. I mean, the question that they do for insanity is, was he suffering? Do they have good information that he was suffering from some kind of mental defect in 1992? And the fact that he's suffering from one now is not definitive as to when that mental defect developed. And now the fact that he's committing these heinous crimes may be evidence that he was insane, but it's not definitive. And it may be that the fact that he committed these heinous crimes created some kind of mental defect from just the trauma of it.
Because I know they were like, I know I read articles and stuff that were saying that possibly it was because, he was a steampunk cosplayer, like a zombie hunter.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you have a better description of steampunk to anybody out there who doesn't know what steampunk is.
Yeah, so it's this like Victorian sci-fi where instead of electronics, everything's powered with steam. And people who like to dress up in steampunk, they usually wear like copper colored. They try to look like they're in a sepia tone photo, a vintage photo. But it often involves fantasy elements like werewolves and zombies and such.
So that's why he was the zombie hunter or zombie killer. And he actually had a old cop car type looking car that he had like painted up and to be like his cop. And like he took it to Comic-Con conventions here and he posed with the police and he was very, once he was, he did the zombie walks, he did all of that. And I mean, I wonder if that's how they were trying to play his like insanity, was that like he couldn't tell the difference between like his cosplay and his real life, or just, I don't know. But whatever it is, they deem that he's competent to stand trial. So we're still waiting.
I mean, as far as unsolved, this mystery is now solved. We can, like, he's confessed to the crime, and we're just trying to figure out what kind of sentence he's gonna do, whether it's in prison for the rest of his natural life, death penalty, or in an institution, right? That's basically what we're looking at, right?
Yeah.
And then, so that's at least a better ending than poor Guerrery. Is there any more that you wanted to talk about with Miller?
No, I mean, he's just waiting now. I know like COVID and everything has delayed the case. COVID has been one of those factors of delaying the case. And I know the insanity plea had been delaying the case, but now with, I don't know, with, well as well too, the court systems kind of have the cases down in this new way we live. So I'm hoping to actually be able to come back on and do like a follow-up episode where we can, know that he's been put away for whatever his sentence will be.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see if they're going to broadcast the trial like they did with Jodi Arias or Kyle Rittenhouse. And then maybe we could do a live stream where we're watching the trial live. Yeah. That would be fun. But, it's just good that they've got this guy. He's going to stand trial. Hopefully it starts later this year. But we also were looking at some other cases. It got us wondering, are there other unsolved cases from the Phoenix area. And one of the ones that jumped out was, of course, Bob Crane, who's an actor, a celebrity who was killed in the Phoenix area in Scottsdale back in the late 70s. And no one has ever been convicted of that crime. What do you know about Bob Crane?
I know. What do you want to know about him?
Well, let's start with who he was and what he did and why he was a celebrity.
He started out in Connecticut as a radio host, and he quickly outgrew that market. And, it was deemed, bigger things for him to move west. So he actually moved out to Los Angeles, Hollywood, where everybody loves to go to make it big.
Yeah, he was gonna make it big and get his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
So as he was doing his radio show, he was interviewing someone from Dick Van Dyke Show, and the charisma and stuff of Bob Crane was like, you should get into acting. And she kind of got him into acting, and he ended up getting on a new TV show that was going to be coming out called Hogan's Heroes, which ended up being on for a number of seasons. But, he didn't even think that the show was even going to last. So he actually kept doing radio while he was filming Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, when he read the script, he thought it was a drama. He didn't realize it was a comedy.
Yeah.
He didn't think anybody wanted to do a comedy that featured Nazis.
I mean, it is kind of a weird take, but I mean, I guess it's actually, it's pretty campy and funny. So I was actually just watching it the other day.
Yeah, for sure. But so how did he end up in Scottsdale?
So as time passed, things ran down. He ended up moving to Scottsdale to do he bought like a script, and he was doing like a dinner play type of thing.
Yeah.
At a hotel here. And I was trying to find exactly what it was.
Yeah, he was doing dinner theater. He bought the script. He had starred in the play in LA, and he brought it out here because there was like you said, a dinner theater, and they were looking for productions, and he thought he could make some money at it because his Hollywood acting career had basically wound down after Hogan's Heroes.
It's that when you get typecasted like that.
Yeah. It wasn't just the typecasting, though, right? I mean, he had this other life, and in fact, the kind of the dual life and his murder ended up being the subject of a movie that came out in 2002. But he also had this other life where he loved to sleep with lots of women. He was married, he had his kids, but then he had this kind of sex life with.
I think he had a couple wives. A couple divorces.
He had his first wife left him when he was in California, and then he married this other gal named Patty, and she kind of figures into the story later on. But Patty was more permissive, didn't want to leave him, even though she knew what he was up to. And he would not only would he sleep with lots of women, but he would take pictures of them. He would film his encounters with them. He was kind of an amateur pornographer. And he had this business partner who also was a participant in his pornography. What was that guy's name? Carpenter?
Yep.
Yeah. So Carpenter. Was it James Carpenter?
John
Carpenter, yeah. That's the same as that horror director, right? It's not the same guy. Not the same guy.
Not the same guy.
Same name, but not the same guy.
Richard Dawson introduced him to John Carpenter.
Yeah, Richard Dawson also kind of one of those Hollywood creepers. He was the host of Family Feud, and he'd always kiss the women on Family Feud.
Yep.
Anyway, so Bob Crane moves to Arizona, moves to Scottsdale. He tells his son, I'm looking to get a fresh start. I'm going to leave Patty, and I'm going to start all over. I'm going to reinvent myself. And then police find him like not long after that, right? What happened?
So they did a couple. They did their dinner theater. It was called Beginner's Luck, and it was at the Windmill Dinner Theater in Scottsdale, which I don't even know if it's still here.
It's probably under a different name now, but
so what happened was they did it. He left for the night. It was a see you tomorrow. And when tomorrow came, there was no. He didn't show up. So on the afternoon of June 29th, his co-star Victoria Ann Barry went to his apartment after she failed to show up for a lunch meeting that they had. That's where she found his dead body. That's
wow.
Where he was found bludgeoned to death and had an electrical cord tied up around his neck. So, yeah, he was bludgeoned to death.
And was he tied up, or was just the cord around his neck?
It was just the cord around his neck.
Okay.
So maybe he was into something a little kinky.
Might have been doing some kinky. I'm not going to shame a kink. But
no. Whatever you like to do.
But yeah, so he had been beaten, and they had brought someone in to identify the body, right? And half his face was so messed up that they couldn't tell from that side of his face. And it wasn't until it was like the hotel owner or the theater owner. And then when they moved his face over, then they could tell, oh yeah, that's Bob Crane.
Yeah, they said it was a gruesome scene. They said, when you walked in, like, because they say it was a camera tripod that is what he was bludgeoned with. And I know in the 70s, they weren't this flimsy, thin aluminum like like camera tripods are now.
Yeah, it was probably steel.
So it's probably this big, huge, heavy one picking you up. There was probably some oomph behind it. So they said there was so much blood spatter that it was going up the walls and it was just covering everything. So, just like we were talking, head wounds, they bleed, as much as everybody knows.
Yeah. So the police started investigating, and they came up with basically 3 scenarios, right? They had either this was an encounter, one of his regular encounters gone south, gone sideways. It was either his ex-wife, or no, his current wife, who he was planning to divorce, or it was John Carpenter, his business partner.
Yeah, because they say there was no forced entry, no real evidence, and nothing of value was taken.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't, thieves stumbled upon him. It looks like it was sought out for him. Like their intent was to kill him.
Yeah, he was the target. There wasn't like a safe they were after. No, this wasn't a random burglary. This was someone who had access to him, and they were coming for him.
Yes. And it says here that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because it says that Carpenter had flown in a few days prior to the murder. So he had a rental car. So they actually impounded the rental car to search it. But what I think is funny is it says that at the time, Scottsdale must have been so small then that they actually didn't have a homicide division. They didn't have anything capable of actually processing a scene like the one that had happened inside that apartment 132A.
Yeah, they had almost no protocols because they had all kinds of people come in who may or may not have been involved with the scene. In fact, his son came in to examine the scene and left fingerprints behind. And later, his son criticized their handling of the crime scene because it contaminated a lot of the evidence.
Mm-hmm. Says, and they said once they impounded the rental car, they found blood smears that matched Crane's blood type.
Yeah.
And then they said they actually found brain matter in the trunk.
Yeah, and they didn't properly handle the tissue sample, and so that was eventually lost when it came time to go to trial. And but they did take photos of the interior of the car, so at least they were documenting as they were contaminating, and that was probably the only thing that saved their case. But even then, like they really messed it up. So, who did they arrest for the crime out of those three?
Says eventually Carpenter was the one that was taken in and put on trial for it.
And that was like 1992, right? So about the same time as Canal Killer was getting fired up.
Yes, it was right around the same time. Yep, in June of 92, Carpenter was arrested and charged with Crane's murder, and that trial actually started in 1994.
That's so long. It's like 14 years later he was arrested. 16 years later he's tried. Did he go down for it?
No.
How did he get out? How did he get away with it?
The Carpenter's attorney, they said it was all circumstantial and inconclusive evidence.
Yeah, I mean,
and witnesses at the restaurant where they had dined before the murder, they had put him there. And since they didn't actually really have a murder weapon, and that they say the tripod is just speculation, and they only speculated because of Carpenter's job. That was just, he filmed.
Yeah.
So it's I guess, a bad mishandled case in all angles.
Yeah, I think the defense was able to successfully create enough doubt by leaning into Bob Crane's sex life, right? They brought up all the encounters he had over the years and how this could easily have been a scorned woman or a cuckolded man, and even Bob Crane Jr., his son, still thinks it was Patty, his second wife, who he was going to divorce and was looking at losing a lot of her livelihood.
And they also said there was even another actor somewhere that swore vengeance after a violent argument with Crane in Texas. So they think it could have been anybody.
Yeah. There's just too many. He had wronged too many people in the jury's eyes.
Yep.
Yeah, so that one is still, like, no one has ever been convicted of that crime. The authorities still think it was probably John Carpenter. But he died in 96. Is that right?
98.
98. So he died in 98. Patty's dead now too. Pretty much everybody who could have been involved with it has passed away. So it remains unsolved. And but we can rest easy knowing that the people who were involved are long gone.
So yeah, just another
day in Phoenix.
I guess. What a weird time 92, 93 and stuff was.
You know, that's what's ironic is that was the year that my family moved to Phoenix, and there's a lot of high-profile cases happening then.
Maybe we should move back. No.
Yeah, my sister-in-law doesn't like to visit because she always cites the crime rate, and it's like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. So this is our first episode. I thought it went well. What'd you think?
I think it went good.
What are some of the things that you're looking forward to talking about?
Paranormal. I'm a huge paranormal guy. UFOs.
We've got some ancient aliens interviews coming up next week.
I've got a paranormal hunter to come on and talk about some of her experiences hunting ghosts and, going through evidence and doing the whole overnight experiences of trying to, capture evidence and everything to like, she's had, some of these presents have actually followed her home.
Wow.
And she's had to do like, go away spirit or something type of things to like, get it, so that it can leave. And like, and I'll get into it how like my house is haunted and I had her come and we did like a mini investigation for a while. So I'll have her on and we'll kind of talk about the mini investigation we did at my house. And
that's really cool. We're also going to be looking at some haunted locations. We've got a guy who's saying he can hook us up with a psychic to do an interview. So we'll probably do that too.
Love psychic.
But there's really no weird there's no topic too weird for us. We're going to look at all of them. So go ahead. And
if anybody out there has anything they'd like us to like research on and discuss, if there's that unsolved murder in your hometown, or is that, that paranormal experience type of thing, if you've got anything like that, let us know. And if we can research it and make it into a show, I'd love to.
Yeah, for sure. And come tell us your strange stories. Leave your strange stories in the comments, or reach out to us on Instagram, and we'd love to hear more.
You can reach us at Instagram. You can email us at thresholdsofreality@gmail.com.
Yep.
So there's plenty of ways to get a hold of us.
Awesome.
And there'll be even more coming up in the next as episodes progress.
And we're going to work on the intro and outro. This is our first episode. We'll get it tuned up. But anything else you want to add, Kyle?
No, great first episode. I can't wait to dive into more things with you and our audience. And I think it's going to be a great time.
All right, here we go. Join us next time. I tell you. Okay, here we go.
Till next time.